art.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Painting with Connor. Last week, we painted our wonderful sky, and this week, we're going to be working on the water in our landscape painting. Next week, we're going to finish the whole thing. So if you watch all 3 episodes, you're going to see the entire painting come to life. Now, I'm going to be starting at the horizon line once again, but this time, instead of heading upwards, I'm going to head down the canvas to fill up this whole blank area we've got down here. Basically, to oversimplify it, we're going to be taking our sky and reflecting it into our water. But personally, I don't like to completely repaint the entire sky usually into the water. You can do that. But what I'm going to be going for is something more of an impressionistic version of the sky. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to be starting with white and yellow. I'm going to go ahead and run those colors along the bottom of your screen, just in case you forgot from last week. We've got white, primary yellow, medium magenta, light blue violet, and cobalt blue. But I'm starting off with white and yellow. And I'm going to start right along that horizon line, just like before. Again, I'm not worrying too much about the actual horizon line because next week we're going to clean that right up, won't we? We'll clean it right out, don't worry. White and yellow right across that horizon line. There we go. Right across. Again, I want to make sure it's relatively flat, but again, we'll clean it up next week. We'll clean it up. And I'm just going to be working my way down my water. Now, just like how I was explaining with the sky that I like to use the thin edge of my brush to get all these wispy little clouds up here, and then use the thick edge or the wide edge of my brush to blend things out, I like to do a similar thing in the water. The difference with the water is that all of my brush strokes want to remain horizontal or side to side in the water. All my brush strokes, if possible. Again, all the imperfections you end up with add to your landscape painting. Nature's full of imperfections. And that's what makes it beautiful. All those little imperfections in your landscape painting are what's going to make it unique and beautiful. A lot of times, the landscapes that we fall in love with when we see them out there in nature, a lot of times it's the weird looking ones. There's usually something weird about them. That's why we like them so much. We like them to be a little weird. So I'm starting off with just white and yellow and rocking my brush back and forth. Now, in order to get nice, smooth, horizontal lines, you'll notice here that I'm not actually moving from my wrist today. I'm moving from my shoulder, and almost, if you can see my whole body, I'm almost moving all the way from the ground up. Right through my body, through my shoulder, through my arm, and I'm rocking all the way back and forth. It's a full body workout. White and yellow, sliding back and forth. As I'm moving down, I'm going to start to add some of that magenta. I just dip right into the magenta, bring it up there. That's hot. A little bit of magenta. And once again, let it overlap into the yellow. Toss in some white. The key to blending acrylic paint is letting the colors overlap. Let them overlap. Using some white and magenta now. Rocking my brush back and forth. Rocking my whole arm back and forth as I'm heading down. And I'm just going to add a little bit more pink as I go down. A little bit more pink. But what we're going to do here is we're going to reproduce approximately what's happening up here in the sky. So we want to be mirroring approximately what's happening up there. So I've got the yellow Then I've got some pink moving in, and we're actually going to now need to hop into some blue. But once again, you can see there, I almost made a mistake. But there's no real mistakes, right? I almost took that yellow and put it right into the blue. Once again, I've got my brush cleaner down here. It's got a little screen in the bottom of the jar. It helps to get that paint off the brush. But I make sure to wash off that brush, wash all that yellow off before I go into that blue, because once again, blue and yellow make green. And I'm trying to avoid the green today. Now, if you end up with green in your water, it's really not too big of a deal. It really is not. And once again, with acrylic paint, if you ever have something like that happen that you don't like, maybe you get a streak of green up there, all you gotta do is takes a deep breath, relax, take a deep breath, allow that area of your paint to dry, and once it's dry, you're able to layer acrylic paint right on top of itself, so there's no need to worry. No need to worry. So now I'm getting cobalt blue, the dark blue you've got there, and magenta to get this nice purple color. And bring it in. Once again, what Connor likes to do, what I like to do, is go a little bit overboard with my colors sometimes. So you'll notice here that I've got a nice harsh line. I say nice, but I don't mean it. I don't mean it. We want to soften that line, so I'm going to take some extra pink. Right there, rock it over the border between those colors. There we go. Soften it right up. Soften it right up. Using that pink as a blender. Basically what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to reproduce the sky and the colors of the clouds and the color of the background sky there without repainting clouds, without painting clouds into the water. I'm just going for the colors. Just going for the approximate colors here today with a different brush stroke. There we go. And anytime you want to, you can grab a little white. Streak in little bits of white here and there. Because when you're painting water, adding white almost always helps out a little bit. Because there's always little bits of water, there's white caps that happen. Sometimes it's just a bit of water is reflecting a bit of light. Light refracts all over the place, all over the place. So little extra sparkles of white here and there in random locations is actually going to really help out your water. So I just sprinkle in some white now and again. There we go. So now I've gotten to that bluish area. So then I got to go back into the pink. And maybe you're starting to see approximately how I'm translating this. It's very approximate business. It's very approximate. There's nothing too crazily technical happening. Now I'm looking at this blue over here. Bring that blue right up here. There we go. Little pink, little blue. And just pull it right up in there. There we go. Make sure you're bringing that paint all the way around the edge of the canvas. I mentioned that last week. You're going to want to bring that paint all the way around the edge of the canvas when you hang this painting up above your big old mantelpiece and your friends come over for that dinner party you've been planning. It'll be hard to convince them you spend $500 on this painting if you don't paint those edges. Make sure you paint them up. There we go. Blues and pinks to get this kind of middle area here. Where it gets a little bit dark. It gets a little bit dark right there. But then it gets a little bit light again in this strip. And that strip is going to get a little bit lighter. Well, let's see here. Let's wash out this brush. All the way out. Dry it off. I've got a little napkin down here that I'm using to dry off my brush. And I'm looking for kind of this foggy bluish color. So once again, I got that light blue violet. I'm gonna get some of that. Bring that right into my water. Once again, here, let me give you an example of something that happens a lot of times when you're acrylic painting. Is you might be like, I want to add light blue. So I'm going to add it right there. And you're going to end up something that looks like you're adding a stripe to a country's flag. That's what it's going to look like. And that's not really what we want. We want everything to be blending and mixing. Streaks are okay. Having streaks in your water is actually a good thing because I think it gives the impression of little ripples. But stripes, they can be a little too bold sometimes, especially if you don't mean them to be there. So to help blend these edges here, I'm just going to brush right over them. I'm just going to brush right over them, letting that light blue mix with my other colors a little bit. Maybe I'll use a little pink here. Toss that pink in as well. There we go. Once again, whenever you see these little areas of white, tiny little white dots showing through your paint, that means that you don't have quite enough paint in those areas. So while I'm painting, I'm watching out for those. I might go back real quick in this area. There we go. And with a blank brush, brush right over it. Maybe sometimes you got to give it a little extra elbow grease, give it a little scrub. Just like you're cleaning the bathroom. Giving it that little scrub pops those air bubbles and gets that paint into those pockets. Pops those air bubbles and gets those paint into those pockets. A lot of P's there. There we go. And going back into my light blue up here, reflecting that area downwards, I'm even going to throw some extra white into this area to really lighten it up because it got pretty light up there in that pocket in the sky. Let's see if I can reproduce that. There we go, and you can play around with using the light blue, or even like I'm doing right now, using cobalt blue and white as well, just to give some variation. Again, the more variation you've got in your landscape, the more organic things look. Nature is very all over the place when it comes to colors. When you look at a tree leaf, it might look green at first. It might look green at first, but if you get real close, you can find about 1 billion different colors in that leaf. Everything in nature is like that. Nothing is just one color. Nothing is just one color. Or this little fun fact for you about blue. Bluebirds aren't even blue. Apparently they're brown. Somebody told me this. Bluebirds are brown. But it's something about the way the light reflects off of their wings, off their feathers, that makes them look blue. So now we got that kind of nice little blue area coming through. And then we need pink and then going into the dark blue. So I need to squeeze myself a little bit more of that medium magenta. Just medium. It's just medium magenta. Toss a little medium magenta in there. You can see how I'm streaking these colors together. Once again, just like with the clouds last week, I talked about the pressure of your brush. Sometimes, if you're like, this area, I want it to be super pink, get in there. Press down, press down. But you might go from pressing down hard in your pink area to wanting to bring just a little bit into the light blue. I barely touch. I lighten up on my brush. So I press down hard over here, press down, get all that pink in there, and then lighten up. Barely touch. There we go. So you can play around with the pressure of your brush. Next, we got to get into the dark blue. Tons of dark blue coming in here. And actually, I've got to give myself a little crank here because there's a tiny bit of my canvas hidden. There we go. It's hidden behind that lip on my easel. Make sure he's stable. All right. Getting that dark blue, and I'm going to start at the bottom with the dark blue. That's because bringing these colors in, sometimes it'll bleed in and cover up the other colors. So, for example, if you're adding a dark blue or a black in this way, sometimes starting from the other side of what you're painting and bringing it towards the rest of it can help prevent too much takeover. Dark colors like this blue like to bully other colors. So sometimes you gotta trick them. Sometimes you gotta trick the dark blue to work with their friends. Bring that paint all the way around the edge. Bring that dark blue in here. There we go. Once again, you can toss in little bits of light blue or white just to give it some variation. Scrubbing to fill in those little white pockets that end up on your canvas. The other thing we talked about is using touches of water. Normally I don't like to use water when I'm acrylic painting, but anytime that I want to get some paint into those little air bubbles and they're causing me trouble, a touch of water. You don't want too much water, otherwise your paint will start dripping down your canvas. But if you use just a little bit of water, it helps to loosen up the paint and get it into those little tiny areas sometimes. Try that out, see if it works for you. See if it works for you. And a little bit of white to help blend that out. And you can see here how approximate I am with my water. I like to keep the water loose. I like to keep it loose. There we go. And then I'm going to wash out my brush. Now I have kept it pretty loose in the water here. But the thing I like to do with reflections that really helps out, I like to keep it real loose, get the whole impression going on, which is what I have at the moment. Then I'm going to come back and find a few key little spots that I think would really help out. For example, this right here in the sky is bright and it really pops. So I'm going to bring just a touch of pink. Still use my big brush, touch of pink. Right into the water here. Barely any paint. Barely touching the canvas. And maybe a few circles. There we go. Maybe a few circles. There we go. And then maybe this little spot pops out real nice there as well. Maybe just a little bit of that blue. And just a little bit of blue. Still got pink on my brush. A touch of white in there. Barely any paint. Rock it in there just to get that dark strip that was happening up there in the sky. Find an impression of it in the water. There we go. Then I've noticed this little bright pink bit there. Maybe I want to brighten it up down there, so I'm getting pink and white. I had to find a new spot. I made a new spot for mixing over here. I've made a big old mess. Yeah, maybe right here. Brighten that up even more. Why not? Why not? There we go. And that is pretty much what I'm looking for there on my water reflection. Nothing too crazy this week. Just something real simple for you. Nice and relaxing. So far, we've got ourselves an abstract. Or maybe a seascape. But next week, I'm going to be coming back and grounding us. I'm going to be giving us some land in there, and we're going to get our whole landscape finished up next week. So I'll see you then. Subscribe to the channel, and you have a wonderful week. God bless. Art.